Hello, my name is Chef Kevin. I'm a nutrition educator with Leo's Pantry, and today I'm going to be preparing veggie black bean quesadillas as part of the Food Pharmacy food demo. So we'll jump right in. This recipe is on eatfresh.org. You can use a variety of different vegetables. The recipe that's written, I believe, uses spinach, zucchini, and corn. Today I'm actually going to be using just some Brussels sprouts. The key to this recipe is that we are including in our quesadilla, which sounds maybe it isn't a food that you would typically think is a healthy food. We are opting for a whole wheat tortilla that has a little bit more fiber, a little bit lower carb. We are going to be including in the quesadilla some veggies, of course some cheese, and then some beans to provide even more fiber and protein and make this kind of an actual meal that we could eat. So I just got Brussels sprouts. One beautiful thing with Brussels sprouts is they have these little roots on the bottom, and when you chop off that root, you'll get the outer leaves that fall off, and basically what you'll be left with is a clean Brussels sprout. And if you were going to serve these raw, I would recommend washing them or cleaning them. But if you're going to cook them, this is totally fine. So at this point, you could cut them in half, toss them in the oven to roast them. I'm going to prepare a few like this, and we're going to be shredding them up and cooking them over a medium-low heat in the saute pan. So I'm just going to go ahead and go there. As always, I have a wet towel underneath my cutting board to prevent it from slipping, and I'm using a sharp knife because a dull knife is more dangerous than a sharp one. Here on the side I have all the Brussels sprouts odds and ends. You could certainly wash those. Some of them you could still eat. Another option is to throw them in a Ziploc bag, keep them in your freezer, and then when you have a bunch of veggie scraps, to make a little veggie stock that you can use for any of your cooking. I'm going to go ahead and start shredding through these. So the way that I like to shred these is I'll cut them in half, have the flat side down, then turn them over and just cut through them as if they were little cabbages on the flat side, just shredding them almost like you were going to shred them for a coleslaw. All right, we've got our shredded up Brussels sprouts. Now we're just going to get a little saute pan at a low medium heat. Gonna get about 2 teaspoons of cooking oil. Any old cooking oil will do for this. And gonna rearrange here, get a little bit more space. I'm gonna drop this right in. You can certainly do more than this. This is probably about almost 2 cups of shredded Brussels sprouts. You could probably do up to 3 cups, but I wouldn't want to crowd the pan because then you might get it'll just be a little uneven in the cooking. So this is totally fine. Even just with about 2 cups of vegetables, you'll be able to make at least 4 or 5 quesadillas that should be able to serve around 3 people, depending on if you're serving anything else with them, like a salad or some other side. I'm going to drizzle over just about a half teaspoon of salt. The salt helps aid in the cooking. And of course, if you're doing a low sodium, low salt diet, you can do less of this. You could add some lemon juice to get a little bit of tang, a little bit of flavor. Just some fresh cracked black pepper. I always love to add this to anything that I'm cooking, really. Just adds in flavor. And then lastly, for this dish, I'm going to add a little bit of chili powder. Here I have my own chili powder that I've ground from some guajillo chilies. It's just a Mexican dried chili. If you have a spice grinder, you can grind them up. The thing that I like about the guajillo chilies is that it's got a lot of flavor. It's a little smoky, but it's not super spicy, so this is really perfect for folks who maybe are avoiding spicier foods. But if you want to throw in some spice, you could definitely throw in some cayenne. Heck, you could even throw in some diced jalapeno or serrano pepper, or even habaneros, depending on how spicy you're feeling. Just gonna grab a spatula, and this will cook. This will take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, just depending how much you have in here. I like to cook them just right, just almost al dente, so that they still have a little bit of crunch. When you're eating them in the quesadilla, it'll be nice to have a little bit of a crunch with the soft beans and the soft cheese. So just keep moving these around every minute or so. Let them cook up. They'll turn into a darker green color. And then we'll continue once these are done. So just about 5-10 minutes until they're cooked. Of course, if you want them to cook a little bit faster, you could put a lid on top of here. Let it steam up a bit, but this is fine for me. It'll only be a few minutes. So it's been about 6-7 minutes since it's a smaller amount of Brussels sprouts. They're basically almost cooked. I gave it a little taste. Wanted to add just a little bit of salt. It's always important to taste your food as you're cooking it. Make sure it's seasoned to your liking. I'm going to turn off the heat, put these Brussels sprouts into a little bowl. Now we are going to proceed with making our quesadillas now that we have our veggies here nice and cooked. Like I mentioned, we're going to be using whole wheat tortillas that are a little bit better than regular old flour tortillas. You could also use corn tortillas for these. That'll be totally fine. So we're going to be using some cheese. Here I just have Mexican style 3 cheese blend. You get these at most supermarkets. You can use whatever kind of cheese that you want. I will say, if you are trying to cut down on your fat content and you see a cheese that's labeled as fat-free, just to double check it and make sure that they haven't added a lot more sugar to compensate for the fat. That's often a trick, especially that I think the dairy industry will use with yogurt. That's something that's labeled as fat-free will actually be way higher in sugar so that it still tastes good and you don't notice the absence of the fat. But what happens to that excess sugar in our body? Of course, it gets turned into fat. So just be really wary of that. Here I have a couple different beans that I want to show y'all. Here I have some black beans that are in a can. It's labeled no salt added, so there's no sodium at all in these. And then here I have some pinto beans that are in brine. So if we're trying to watch our salt content, our salt eating, then we can actually take these out, put them into a colander, and give them a little rinse. That'll get rid of a lot of the excess water, that'll get rid of a lot of the excess salt, that is found in these beans, and make it just a little bit healthier, make it a little bit of a better option. For today's quesadilla that I'm going to be making, I actually, ahead of time, used some pinto beans and made some refried beans. Super common in Mexican food. Basically, all you do is put those pinto beans into a large sauté pan. You can add a little bit of oil. You'll have to add some water. You could fry a jalapeno or some onion to give it a little bit more flavor, and then you just mash them up. That's refried beans. So I'm gonna be making my quesadilla here in this pan. Gonna do a little bit of a lower heat. And I'm just going to toss it down on one side and let it heat up for about 30 seconds. That will be the side that we're going to put the fillings on. I just like to get the tortilla nice and warm and a little bit malleable so it doesn't crack. Alright, it's nice and warm on that side. Just gonna flip it over and we'll start building our quesadilla here. I like to go with the beans first, so whether you're doing refried beans or whole beans from a can, just do a nice little spread here. Anywhere from a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons is good. I like to make my quesadillas really overflowing with ingredients, especially if those ingredients are delicious and have good nutrients for us. So we've got our little slab of beans. I'm going to cover all of that bean with Brussels sprouts. As you can see, all that Brussels sprouts cook down to a really small amount of vegetables, so you can definitely cook more, but even then, we're not using a whole lot per quesadilla, so this will still make quite a few quesadillas. Get the whole tortilla covered, the whole tortilla with the beans covered with Brussels sprouts. And then lastly, a little bit of cheese, and I'm going to put that on the other side of the tortilla. It's okay if a little bit gets on the pan, that'll get nice and crispy, and it'll just be delicious. Add a little bit more cheese just to really get that melty flavor in there. And then I'm just going to fold this up. Alright, and then we're just going to let those ingredients come together, let the cheese melt. It'll be about 2 minutes per side. We'll give it a flip. It's okay if you're having a little bit of spillage, you know. Those pieces that get on the pan will just get a little nice and toasty. It's still completely edible, still completely fine. If you're noticing that the tortilla is burning or getting a little too crispy, you can always lower the heat, keep it going. Like I said, I like to have it on like a low-medium heat. That gets the tortilla nice and crunchy and crispy and browned, just like that. Still gives a chance for all the fillings to get nice and warm and for that cheese to melt. Gonna give that another minute or two. Just let it really warm up, let it heat through. Quesadillas like this go really delicious with avocado, with any type of salsa, hot sauce or regular salsa. Yeah, really have fun with it. You could even do a little bit of sour cream too, extra cheese, some crumbly cheese on top. I have some salsa that I'm going to pull out and eat with this. That'll make it even that much better. And all you're looking for here after a couple minutes is for the tortilla to be nice and crispy and crunchy. Everything's cooked on the inside. Just a matter of preference of how crispy, how crunchy you want it. I've turned off the heat. I'm just going to transfer this over to my cutting board. And I always like to cut my quesadillas into nice little triangles to present them. So I'm just going to cut down the middle, then cut each of those into little triangles. And then on a nice little plate, I'm just going to put them and start layering them so that they look super beautiful. And there we have our black bean and veggie quesadillas. Like I said, you can use any type of vegetables that are nice and cooked. The Brussels sprouts work really well. You could use cabbage. Brussels sprouts and cabbage are super, super similar. And I have a little bit of salsa here that my mom actually made. This is a salsa molcajete. This is a volcanic rock mortar and pestle. If you have a regular mortar and pestle, it works. And all that's in here is roasted tomato, roasted garlic, and roasted jalapeno. I'm just going to throw some of that on there. Like I said, avocado would be a great addition to this dish, but even just like that, it'll be perfect. Nice and melty and cheesy. Got the beans, got the veggies, the whole wheat tortillas. I hope you feel inspired to make this. And that's all for today's video. Thank you for watching.